Hello and welcome here at the Hindu. If you are just tuning in, we are looking at the situation in Nepal. Many developments there, and we'll get you right to them over the next hour or so. We'll have experts as well as people on the ground to tell us just where the situation is and where does it look like it is going. Straight away, I'd like to welcome on the show Sanjeev Satgainya. He is a contributor to the Hindu, and you read his analysis as well as his reportage from Kathmandu quite often. And also joining us, Akanshya Shah. She's at the minute at the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense and Strategic Analysis, and foremost Nepali analyst. We'll also be joined by our diplomatic correspondent, Kallol Bhattacherjee, and we'll try and get you some more of what is happening on the diplomatic front, particularly given India's appeal now and advisories sent out. But first, just to get to the ground and what we know has happened, Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli formally submitted his resignation just a few moments ago. The Nepali President Ram Chandra Podal has accepted that resignation after 2 days of protests, with tens of thousands of protesters out on the streets of Kathmandu. Those protests going to other parts of the country as well. And we understand many key buildings on fire, including the Supreme Court, including many homes of the Prime Minister. The other ministers have been attacked as well. We also understand that at the moment, many other areas are on fire where we aren't quite sure of just what the casualty and other details are. So we're going to try and get just what is happening on the ground and how much we can tell from the situation there. To bring you on, Sanjeev, and to start with, thank you for joining us at a very difficult time there in Kathmandu, and I hope everyone is safe for the moment.
Hi, thanks for having me, Suhasini. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes, Sanjeev, we can hear you.
First of all, we need to be very particular about one thing. The way this yesterday's protest has been reported largely as a protest against social media ban, this reduces the degree of this protest actually. Social media ban was a massive miscalculation by the Oli government. As a matter of fact, the anger was simmering and it's pent up anger. And Nepali society was sitting on a tinder box for quite a while. It was just a calm before the storm. And last week, when the Oli government suddenly abruptly banned 26 social media sites, it just worked as a catalyst. As a matter of fact, the JNG, who we are calling, are protesting against misgovernance that has been there for quite a while, for the last 1 decade or more. And the nepotism, that crony capitalism and corruption that has been growing. And those political class were enjoying luxurious lives, and this Gen Z got so frustrated that at our expense or our parents' expense, tax money, you are enjoying this life was suddenly burst up. Actually, the social media ban lit the fire under Gen Z, and that led to the protest. That's how we should first understand this.
Okay, understood. As a chronology there, give us a sense of what you have seen since the morning. Obviously, it's there's a curfew, so nobody going out. But after 19 people were killed yesterday, what were the scenes that we've been seeing, and what can you tell us about the attacks in particular on members of the government? Some videos have been floating. Former Prime Minister Deuba, the Foreign Minister Arzu Deuba, being taken out of their homes. Clearly, that was attacked and burnt. We're also seeing videos and hearing about the attack on Mr. Oli's houses, both in Kathmandu and outside. So just give us a sense of what you've seen since the morning.
Okay, this is very unconventional protest I have found when I saw on the ground. Like most of the protests and demonstrations in Nepal have been led by political parties, and it just happened where there is no political agenda or political leadership leading the protest. And this time, one particular thing I noticed that when police were firing rubber bullets or even tear gas cells, or they tried to push the protesters back, they would not. They would relent for a while and they will again march forward. And that was not the case earlier in the protest, which was led by political parties. So even during 2006 protest during King Gyanendra's regime, that lasted 18 days, and the restraint was seen there from the security forces also. But that's why some people are saying that in 4 hours, KP Oli government murdered 19 people. That's how the narrative is here in Kathmandu and across Nepal. So the point is this protest was so so unconventional in that terms. Like nobody was going to retreat, nobody was ready to retreat, and that shows the anger simmering within them for quite a while.
Sure. In fact, when we're looking at some of these videos, we're not seeing, we're only seeing the national flag of Nepal. So, can you tell us about whether there is any kind of political party that's driving it? There are various leaders that we hear about, but we don't actually see a face, if you like. You call them the Gen Z protesters, and that's more or less what everyone is speaking about.
Yes.
But we aren't yet we aren't yet seeing what is exactly the political demand beyond
Yes,
that.
that's where the situation becomes very tricky, Suhasini. Like we don't know yet who is the leader there, who is leading the protest. Like everyone is saying this is an impromptu protest, but Gen Z protest is a very broader term. So there is no structural leadership there. So the point is, Oli has resigned now, and Oli has been appointed caretaker prime minister now. So now the path forward is now whether to go by democratic and constitutional framework or outside the constitutional framework. That's the question now. Now, the only known face we have seen extending support to this Gen Z protest is Balendra Shah, the mayor of Kathmandu, who is immensely popular among the youth and
Of
who
course,
won
known
the.
in India as well, since he was educated, I think, in Karnataka.
Yes, and he is a structural engineer by his education, and he won the election as an independent candidate, defeating the traditional and established parties candidates. And one interesting point is his win was largely based on online campaigning, and he was quick to support this protest on Sunday, and the protesters were on the streets on Monday. And today, after Oli resigned, he was quick to issue a statement on Facebook. He said that, like, be prepared to talk to the army chief, and but make sure the parliament is dissolved before you start dialogue with the army chief. And
In fact,
that carries.
Sanjeev, we're just getting word of reports that even President Paudel has resigned or has offered to resign. Have you got any clarity on that?
Oh, no, no, not yet.
Not as it. Just give me one sec, Sanjeev. I'm going to go across to Akanksha. Akanksha, you're watching from Delhi, which obviously seems to have been taken by surprise. Nobody had really expected these kind of protests to blow up the way they have. And now we're looking at a parliament building on fire, top officials' homes on fire, so many officials attacked. It seems as if the anger is not just against government in power, but the system, if you like. Just give us a sense of what Sanjeev was also alluding to, the build-up to this moment.
Right. Thanks for having me, Suhasini. Yes, you're absolutely right. A lot of people in New Delhi have been seem to been caught off guard. But as Sanjeev has also said, that this was in the making. Mainly, as I look at it, is there are various factors I think which has gone into this. Uh, the immediate demand of the Gen Z were two, if you have seen. On Monday protest, they wanted restoration of social media, which was given. Then the next point, which you have already said, the corruption angle. But by and large, I think people were really angry with the kind of misgovernance that the political parties have, that we've seen
Sure.
during the last few years. And
Akansha,
also,
just
most
sorry
importantly,
to jump in, just to
yeah,
broaden it for for viewers and our readers who may not have been following Nepali politics, just give us a broader sense of why this anger over how many governments. I think you've had 6 governments in the last years that have.
that's right. That's right. That's right. So I'll just take you back a little bit. Uh, since the end of the civil war in Nepal and beginning of the peace process in 2006, we all know that the Maoists were brought into the mainstream. Now, the change that people were looking for was for a new Nepal, which is more inclusive, more progressive, which is more people centric. And obviously the expectation of development because of people leaving the country. There's been unemployment crisis in Nepal for quite some time, with a huge number of youth leaving the country. uh, but I think in last 10 years that we have seen, there's been no delivery on the actual promises. And this was one of the reasons why in the last elections, a lot of independent candidates won and new political parties had emerged in Nepal's political landscape. So that, and I was just coming to one major factor, which is, the revolving of power in the hands of the few leaders. Because between Sherbadur Deuba of Nepali Congress and Mr. Oli of UML and Maoist chief Prachand, we've only seen a kind of power sharing arrangement emerging without really addressing the public grievances. So this was, I think, in the making, which is a massive factor that has led to this. Another thing which I see, and I think it's very important when we look at it, is Nepal government, all the past governments, probably not being able to gauge the changing geopolitics of the region. Nepal, as you know, has to balance its relationship between India and China. You already know what happened during Mr. Oli's China visit just a few days back. I think that was not read very well in New Delhi, especially after he mentioned about Limpiadhura. Now, Mr. Oli has had a nationalist agenda since quite some time. We know this. But at the same time, I think they were also very intolerant about social media criticism. They've been wanting to ban social media. When in his earlier term, too, he's openly spoken about, curbing social media rights. So there have been issues. But just one thing I want to, add over here. They've spoken about, see what's happened in last 2 days. Uh, when they came on the street, they had purely a broad agenda of restoring social media. But as Sanjeev said, it is completely not the entire story. They're talking about governance. They're talking about corruption. They're talking about employment opportunities. They're talking about the overall economic development of the country. So I think these few factors have definitely led to a complete outburst here.
Sure. Let's also bring on Kallol Bhattacherjee, our diplomatic correspondent, who's been following a lot of these events, also from here. Kallol, the Ministry of External Affairs has put out a statement, but is there any sense that New Delhi, the government, was expecting what has happened in Nepal in any way?
Thanks for I think with the absolutely surprised by the developments and the news.
Kallol, we're having some problem hearing you. Maybe if while you get the voice sorted out, I will go across to Sanjeev again. Sanjeev, you're with us. Any more word on what exactly has happened in terms of the government and of President Powell?
As of now, Mr. Oli has resigned, and his resignation has been accepted. But the point is, it had gone too far. the way the state responded yesterday, police responded yesterday, people have now started calling it like resignation is not enough. Like they should be tried for murder, and many people are saying that this is just a sponsored murder, and or 19 deaths, children's deaths within 4 hours is a huge thing for Nepalese. Like since 2006, after the civil war, we had not seen that kind of casualties here in Nepal, and because like children died like 1920s 22 18 old year children died, and that has made the people very emotional and aggressive, angry also. So the question now is how it is going to unfold politically is the major question here, and we're in a vacuum situation kind of thing, like who is leading the government, who is leading the protests, who is going to negotiate with the protesters, and from the government side, who is going to talk to them. There is no clarity on that. After Oli resigned, chief of the Nepal Army, chief of the Nepal Police, chief of the Armed Police Force, and chief secretary and home secretary have issued a statement saying, let's find out a resolution to this peacefully. But how? Nobody knows now. So within the constitutional framework, we are going to find a solution, or we are going to adopt a new model, like independent person to lead an interim government with independent people in the cabinet. But who are these people? Who is going to lead it? Who is the known face there? And if the face is known, whether that person is acceptable or not widely is the question here now.
Right. Sanjeev, it certainly seems like a complete lack of clarity about what is the way forward. Tell me, what are the kind of demands that you have heard over the last few days? Is there a specific demand that everyone has, or was it just about the government resigning?
Yeah. This is the problem of such. I won't be saying it problem, but problem might mean that the protest is a problem. I'm not saying that. The complexity of such kind of protest is they have grievances there, but what exactly is the demand? There is no clarity. Like, what do they want? A regime change? A system change? What do they want? There is no clarity. So the
Sure.
complexity of such protests is this, that they don't have a clear demand, it looks like. And who is going to put forward these are our demands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to who, and who is going to talk to them? And that makes the system even more complex.
All right. Akanksha, for an outsider who's watching what is happening in Nepal, there's a huge sense of deja vu. In the last few years, we saw street protests in Pakistan. Of course, in 2021, we saw what happened in Kabul as well, but that was a lot more organized in terms of the takeover by the Taliban. Then we saw Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and now Nepal, all of which seem to have some sort of similarity in it, that they are driven by Gen Z, as they are called. They're driven by a younger population, angry over the economy, angry over the lack of opportunities. They also seemed to be targeting for a regime change. In other words, it is not good enough. The leadership that has been elected is not good enough. And the third is really the kind of methods they are using seem to be very similar in terms of coming out on the street, overrunning institutions, setting places to fire. Those protests we saw in Colombo that targeted President Rajapaksa at the time, and then the Prime Minister's house, people out there in the swimming pool. In Dhaka, we saw people running away from Ganabhavan with Sheikh Hasina's clothes, any food they could find, but overrunning the area. Are you seeing a similarity to what is happening in Nepal? Is there a common thread we can draw?
Yeah, surely, there are similarities in terms of, because all these, what we've seen in the region are led by the youth who are angry, who are resenting the establishment. In Nepal, also, this is sheer anger and lack of empathy from the political leadership. But, unlike Bangladesh, we knew that a situation like Bangladesh was in the offing in Nepal. And just a few months back, when, Oli government was talking with India, we were all pressing this point, how he should learn from what has happened in Bangladesh. But like I told you, it seems that Nepali leaders, especially Oli's government, has completely not been able to read the mood of the region. This was I'm sure to an extent they knew about the resentment, but there's a small difference as well, because in Dhaka, as soon as the protest started, there were clear set of youth leaders who knew what they actually wanted. That is why it did not take time for Hasina to leave the country. But in Nepal, just like both of you are saying, this is a leaderless movement, and this is a huge challenge, because there are no sets of clear demands. It is obviously homegrown, spontaneous, organic, that is there. But I hope that Gen Z is going to think this through, and with popular leaders, popular figures like Mr. Balin coming in their support, there could also be some kind of a restraint by maybe tomorrow, where they have to sit and think what is going to be the next option, because right now I feel we could head more a scenario more towards what happened in Sri Lanka, because by the end of the day, the parliament is in a position to give some kind of a outlet. Now, if the president is going to resign, which I do not know if it's come through, because when we started the podcast, I think he had not resigned, then it might be a different situation. We might have to look at options outside the constitutional framework. So this is very, very challenging, and very, very difficult to predict right now.
All right. Akansha, in a sense, the Maoist movement was seen as the Gen Z movement. How has it come to this? What has happened in the last 20 years that has led to such a sense of dissatisfaction with, in a sense, the democratically elected government? I mean, Prime Minister Oli had only been 1 year in this round as Prime Minister. Of course, as you were saying, there have been so many coalitions that tried to come together in different formations. But these are elected. I mean, these are elected representatives. How did it come to this?
I think political instability was a massive factor. You know, uh, Mr. Oli, in his first tenure, had two-third government also, but he could not sustain it through. But beside that, almost all the other governments have been coalition governments. And as per the constitution, it is difficult for any one political party to emerge as a major, power in Nepal, because of our proportional representation system. But every government in power has not been able to deliver. I think delivery has been a major, major factor. And let me tell you, Nepal is relatively a very young country. Okay, the aspirations of today's Nepalese are not like that of 2000, the early 2000s. It is changing. I see a lot of youth, including our own children, my own son, being influenced by, say, other Southeast Asian cultures, even like Korean culture, Japanese culture, and I know that they've been influenced by what has happened in Indonesia. That is why they are talking about this Nepo kid, which is the children of the politicians who are flaunting, and who are they actually feel that the leadership has taken advantage of this change just to be retain political leadership.
Some of the anger, in fact, I think also prompted by that TikTok video of a minister just driving through and hitting a woman and then just driving on. So a
Yes.
huge amount of anger just at the privileged classes over there. Kallol Bhattacherjee joins us again. Kallol, thank you for coming back. Give us a sense of how New Delhi is really seeing the situation playing out in Kathmandu right now.
Well, thanks once again, and I think Delhi is surprised because their relation with Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli hasn't been really great over the last at least 1 year. He hasn't been able to visit us so far. But let's not forget that this particular government also has the Devas, the Nepali Congress, and the Foreign Minister Asu Deuba have been to India several times in the last 1 year. So it is a setback in the different sense that at least the key stakeholders who were seen to be positive about India from New Delhi have also been thrown out in this uprising. So it's a sense of surprise, and the reason that we aren't really finding New Delhi taking a very strong position in favor of any of the stakeholders in this uprising is because some of the stakeholders are also quite new to New Delhi, and Delhi has already seen the Dhaka example last year. And it seems that South Bloc wants to be cautious about it and wants to take its own time before, say, a constitutional or perhaps an outside the constitution solution is found out, hopefully by the tonight. But what I gather is that perhaps there is an expectation in New Delhi that the situation should stabilize as soon as possible and there should be some sort of an arrangement. Again, an interim government, perhaps a second interim government in South Asia in the last 1 year to take charge in Kathmandu. But overall, there was not really a lot of pre-information available with India. But there were some emissaries who were visiting Delhi over the last several months. Most importantly, Akita Prasad Yadav visited Delhi in the month of July, and he met some of us, and he actually predicted something like this, saying that there is immense unhappiness about Prime Minister Oli's functioning style, the level of corruption in the system in Nepal, and that India should be ready for a surprise. So this morning I was speaking with Mr. Yadav, and I told him that how did he manage to predict this sort of an uprising? He said even he didn't anticipate this uprising to happen so soon because there is so much unhappiness. So I think India has some bit of information beforehand that things could spiral out of control, but that would happen so soon is a matter of surprise today.
Right. Sanjeev, just that sense, was there a sense that things could get this bad? And of course, we're looking at a few weeks ago that protest by what are seen as royalists or those who wanted to see the RSP come to power in some way, coming out on the streets, and those were cracked down on very quickly. But we saw very large protests. Is there a connection at all?
I won't say it's a direct connection, but the writing was on the wall. When young people joined the monarchy protest, and lots of people in Nepal and writers and analysts also were very dismissive about, come on, they just went for the protest and they don't seek monarchy or but they are not for monarchy and anything. And the protesters, the young protesters were saying we are not here for the monarchy, we are against misgovernance. And we are getting a chance to protest against misgovernance. That's why we are here. And everybody everyone ignored Gen Z or young people, and young people were really ignored here in Nepal by the political class, not just the Gen Z. Ordinary citizens have for the last few years have not been treated like you as human beings. That's how people feel, like political class, their arrogance, their flaunting, and all those things, and the grievance was like piling up there. And but to be honest, like this protest was not expected to swell like this all of a sudden. And I was surprised today. We are saying there is no structural leadership there to lead the protest, this Gen Z protest. But look at the way protest is spread. They attacked Parliament building. They attacked the Supreme Court. They attacked Singh, the seat of the government. Now, this is a symbolic overtake of the regime or the government. And was it choreographed? Was it spontaneous? I cannot say. but it really looks like a symbolic like overtake of the entire three organs of the system. And then the pattern attacking politicians homes and politicians themselves, like give a sense of like what happened in Sri Lanka or Bangladesh. Like a few months ago, when some people used to say like, oh, we might see a Bangladesh movement, we might see a Sri Lanka movement, and this statement used to be in passing. Now that passing statement has become a reality kind of thing today.
And certainly, it does seem as if the entire neighborhood is on fire, suddenly one after another, almost like each protest is learning from a previous protest about whom to target, how to take over the power centers of a city, and to create anarchy over a period of just a few hours, whereas in the past it would have taken that much more. Akansha, what are you hearing about the security establishment in Nepal at present? Is there some kind of understanding that the army will come in and bring order? Are there specific ways in which the security establishment can take control?
Firstly, there is no clarity on that at all. The information which I have received just an hour back is that the political leadership is now under the protection of the security forces, mainly the army. I've
KP
also heard
Sharma
that
Oli.
yeah, Mr. Oli is, I've heard, I'm in Delhi, but Sanjeev can give us a better picture. But of what I've heard, that it could be in Pokhara in under army protection. But the sad part is the death tolls have gone up. I think there have been two more deaths today
Yeah.
in Kathmandu. Now, in terms of what the security agencies are going to do, again, very difficult to predict, but definitely, they have already appealed to Gen Z to at least, halt it temporarily to begin and then give an opportunity to start a dialogue. But looking at the mood in Kathmandu, and it's not only Kathmandu, it's in all the major cities of Nepal. I think this has come a little late, and they would probably not heed to this. The only people who can actually, appeal for calm right now are very popular civil society professional leaders. Mr. Balin is obviously one. But there are other people also who could come to the forefront to, try and restrain the situation. But in terms of security agencies, I think of all the, like everybody I talk to in Nepal are extremely agitated, especially with the Nepal police, because of the kind of brutality. These kids have been targeted. They were like they were shot at in their heads, in their chests. This is not something that Nepal army usually resorts to, and like Sanjeev said, this is very unconventional what we are seeing. Even during the pro-monarchy protest just some time back, the police did restrain, you know and I think there was a lack of strategy, because they were allowed to move in. The crowd did come till in front of the parliament. Then the main reaction started, right, of what we are seeing from here. So it is difficult to say whether the Gen Z coordinators would listen to security agencies, would want to negotiate with security agencies. Until unless the situation subsides a bit, it is extremely difficult to say, Suhasini.
All right. So certainly, from everything you're saying, if we were to put it together, this is a protest. Essentially, what both of you are saying, that is a coming together of young people. It is not necessarily a protest with a political force behind it. Is there a sense, Akansha, there could be any other power involved? In Bangladesh, we certainly saw many allegations of an involvement of bigger power, the US, India, China, all being mentioned. Of course, they're all also very closely involved in Nepal, regardless of how the relationship with the government was. Is there any hint?
This is, I think, a very important point because yesterday Mr. Oli's government had talked about infiltration in the protests. Now, the infiltration, they were pointing at opposition. They were also pointing at political outfits and just about miscreants who just wanted to create problems. Now, this is there, and there was a narrative coming out of Kathmandu that it could be supported by some factions from outside Nepal. But having said that, the protest was just the fact that it was led by Gen Z, you know, cannot, it just sounds like an excuse from Oli government, to just said in massive, they were completely, they were also taken aback, I don't think so Oli government could realize that this would go to this extent
Sure.
because
Sanjeev,
in by
are
afternoon
you?
yesterday.
Sorry, Sanjeev, do you want to finish, Akansha? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but that's all. So, my point is that talking about an external factor involvement it does not sound like a probable, good argument at this point. But India, has been looking for stability in Nepal for quite some time. And looking at the MEA statement today, it was just a note and just a concern. I would, as a Nepali, obviously, because we are on a podcast, would say that it would be better if India could condemn this, very strongly.
Sure. And certainly India has had its problems when it has tried to make a statement that has any color to it, whether it has in Dhaka and all the rest. Sanjeev, I want you to come in on that question, but I also want that question answered. Do we know where Mr. Oli is, as Akanksha suggested, perhaps still in Nepal? Because what we did see in Sri Lanka was President Rajapaksa having to leave the country, going, I think, to Singapore before he then returned. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina fled Dhaka more than a year ago, still in Delhi, has not been able to return. What are we hearing about the leadership there?
But first, I'll give you an update from the president office. The president's office has issued a statement calling on everyone concerned to participate in dialogue, including the representatives of Zenzi. And that's where the point comes again, who are the representatives of Zenzi. So that's there. So the president has just called for dialogue. As far as the questions related to our political leadership and how since morning today, helicopters started hovering over Baluata, where the prime minister lives, and rumors started to spiral that some people started saying he was fleeing to Dubai, he was fleeing to Malaysia, or he was fleeing to somewhere else. And then security forces said that leaders were being transferred to some safe places, whatever that means. But after an hour or so, we saw videos emerging of the Devas being beaten, and they were not in very good shape actually. And Prasanda's house was burning, his car was burning, there were parts of his house was burning, and all his house was set on fire in Balgo, his private residence was. So what this says is like, if we seek a new government or new administration through a democratic process, through a constitutional framework, one of them or one of their leaders might come back to power. Like the face might not be that, but people have that concern that how different they are, the next generation of leaders from these parties, how different are they from them? So that's the question. And these are I have heard these, like Akanksha also said, like he might have gone to Pokhara or Bhairava, we don't know yet, and there is no clarity on that. It's very difficult to predict actually how things are going to unfold. Hopefully, the president's call, and then then some sanity will prevail, and then the protest will die down slowly.
Sanjeev, just so I can clarify, the president's office is still putting out statements. So there's still no word about President Paudel himself stepping down.
Sorry, sorry.
If the president's office is putting out a statement, is there any word about President Paudel stepping down?
No, no, no.
No.
There isn't anything.
You spoke about, of course, Prime Minister Oli. We know the finance minister has been
Yes.
attacked on the street. And, we've seen this disturbing video of the foreign minister of Nepal, who's quite frequently in Delhi and so well known here, Arzu Deoba, as well as her father being attacked and taken away from their homes. What do we know about some of the other leaders of current establishment of which one always sees the Congress, Nepali Congress, the CPN, the Communist Party with the Oli faction and the Communist Party with the Prachanda faction as the three parts of a triangle, if you like. That has changed in the last few years. We've seen a few more parties coming around, but what are we hearing about some of the other leaders, including Mr. Lamichan?
Your voice is breaking. You cannot make it.
Um, I'm sorry. If you can hear me, Kallol, do you want to come in on hearing so far about the position of any of the other leaders? In the old days, one would have assumed many of the leaders would have even come to India. I'm not sure if that's the case anymore.
Well, it's a conditional for many communities, political leaders, and of course, many of them have family here. So it's one of the first options naturally. But given the situation, I think first of all, we have to see if New Delhi is willing to accept their living here. We will grant them permission to be the political class present in Nepal. So I think it is such a good way to watch before they are allowed to conduct.
We seem to be having a lot of audio issues all around, but if I can come back to you, Akanshya, when we're looking at the next generation and the conversations around Colin Shah, Ravi Lamichan, and all the rest of them, they have interesting backgrounds. One was a rapper, one was an engineer. Are we seeing more and more civil society in a sense? Those who are not traditionally politicians or activists or ideologues, sort of now coming in sort of roles simply because of what we're seeing as the advent of social media.
Yes, it's true. We have seen emergence of civil society leaders after a complete vacuum of civil society movement in Nepal. So especially after 2015, we've not had a homegrown civil society movement, but there are faces who have massive influence on majority of people in Nepal, especially the youth. But the more challenging question is, yes, it's true that because of this pressure, PM has resigned. Uh, all the top political leadership has come under pressure. But are they also going to relinquish their offices from their respective political parties? Now, that is a very, very massive challenge, because I think what the next generation actually desires is to see a completely different set of people emerge to run
Mm.
governance. Now, because they would they might not resign as party presidents and party chairmen. Then how do you actually talk about a new generation of leadership evolving? But obviously, this pressure on them is going to stay for some time, and there needs to be a massive realization among them. What has happened is beyond tragic. We would never expect in a country like Nepal. It's actually that something like this in a single day, this such brutality is completely unacceptable. But to look at the way forward, there are a few factors, as you have just said. Depends also on what the president's move would be, would depend on how the party leaders would now this thing. I know for a fact that the voices from the street is for them to go. Now they really need to listen to that voice. This point has come, and a major factor is because I think this voice of the mass has really been suppressed. They really tried to move ahead without a larger consensus with the general public. Now, this is extremely important in democracy. We all know this. And you know, and obviously they are not against democratic values. The whole thing that this movement started was because they thought Oli government was suppressing the right of expression. So if some responsible leadership could, appeal to them for to look at way ahead, I'm sure we will be able to find that way ahead.
Sure. Obviously, there's so much going on there in Kathmandu, and we are going to continue to try and come back to you over the next few days. But I wanted to get some broader thoughts from you, both about where you think we should look for signs of what has happened. In a sense, the Arab Spring, the protests we saw across West Asia in early part of the 2010s seems to be the result of an anti-globalization kind of force. And then it got mixed with all kinds of unhappiness over the economy, a rise in religious radicalism, and many other factors. In the later part of the 2010s, we saw the rise of the alpha leaders. K.P. Sharma Oli was one of them. Prime Minister Modi, President Trump. We see uh, democracies, in a sense, throwing up very strong, decisive leadership. Bolsonaro in Brazil, Orban in Hungary. And then in our region, too, we saw the rise of very, very strong leaders. And we're looking at some pictures of what's happened there in Kathmandu today. Are we now seeing perhaps a new phenomenon that is right now in South Asia in terms of what we're seeing post COVID? Because it is COVID that perhaps those years of the lockdown that dealt a blow, particularly in South Asia. And I say that because it was about the economic impact of the lockdown, the fact that remittances came to a standstill. The fact that the anti-immigration sentiment around the world means that so many of our youth, and that is not just Nepal, it is also India, it is also Bhutan, it's also Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and all, we're not finding as many opportunities abroad. Then you come to the next layer that even elections throw up leaders that don't necessarily speak for the problem. And while Nepal had an election in 2022, and another one, I think the next is expected in 2027, that's not giving people the solution. Are there broader themes that we should be looking at, even as we look at these very stark photographs, videos of people just coming out on the streets and perhaps burning whatever they can find or breaking whatever they see in news? Indeed. I don't think Sanjeev can hear us,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Akansha, do you want to come in
Yeah,
on those
yeah,
broad?
I think your voice is not really clear, but I think you're generally talking about the trends. So no political dispensation can survive without understanding these trends, in South Asia and beyond. And like I told you in the beginning, in Nepal, uh, it is extremely difficult for a smaller landlocked country like Nepal to deal with larger neighbors, to learn lessons from what is happening in the neighborhood, and gauge the mood inside the country and learn from the trends that is happening. And I already told you in the beginning, the Oli government has completely misjudged the changing scenario and the foreign policy priorities of Oli government. You look at how the negotiations with his government attempted with, say, China or the West, or their deteriorating relationship with India. This is not at all in our interest. For last 10, 12 years, since especially after 2015, there has been a rising anti-India sentiment in Nepal, and it's only growing. Uh, but having said that, they have not been able to gauge this situation. Bangladesh is very, very recent. I already told you we may go the Sri Lankan way as well, and the larger effects of Arab Springs that you just mentioned, and also in Southeast Asia. And I told you, Southeast Asia is very important when you talk about Nepal. A lot of people do look at these countries, and so these factors are really, really going to play in, and they have played in. It is really disheartening to see the way the public has actually gone after the political leadership. But because they could not read this and they completely misjudged it, I think that is how it has come about.
If
Shall I
you're
add a couple
just
of points?
Yeah,
Uh,
please, Sanjeev.
uh, There's one thing like in conversation our conversation we're missing one point. Like Oli is not leading the government alone. There is this Nepali Congress there, and if we look at the pattern, how Oli government kept on taking decisions, and the Nepali Congress kept silent, or it did not protest. The point is we have to go back last year when Nepali Congress agreed to make Oli Prime Minister when Prasanta was doing well, they were in coalition, Prasanta and Oli. And suddenly, Sebadu Deva of Nepali Congress goes to Oli and offers him prime ministership on a silver platter. And the entire Nepali Congress doesn't know. And then the Oli government, which had been talking about banning social media sites in the name of regulation, where the intent was clear that the intention was to silence dissent. And Nepali Congress, the Democratic Party, which calls itself, didn't even know. And still, when 19 people died yesterday, Nepali Congress did not take a decision to quit the government. So these patterns are very interesting, and how Nepali Congress functioned as a party in this whole equation, in this scenario. Because Sebadu Deva leads the Democratic Party, but democracy does not exist, he does not practice democracy in his party, it seems. There are people in his party who oppose the social media ban, who oppose a lot of Oli's foreign policy or domestic policies. But still, Nepali Congress could not resist, oppose Oli for what he was doing, and this is quite strange in this dynamics.
All right. Kallol, we're going to try once more with your audio. Just give us a broad sense of where New Delhi sees the role, or because Nepal is not just any other country in the subcontinent. India's relations with Nepal include an open border. They include the exchange of military chiefs at the top, give top honors to each other's military. It means the ability of citizens from Nepal to get practically all citizenship in India other than becoming citizens or voting. Given that kind of close and interlinked nature between Indians and Nepalis, and at least in the past between the governments, even if not in the recent past, how does India sort of, or the foreign ministry, see the future position it's going to have?
Um, First of all, we have to understand one thing that as far as Nepal is concerned, that is post revolution, post monarchy Nepal is concerned, New Delhi did not really have a very clear understanding of what sort of a polity Nepal was going to become. Because on the one hand, Nepal had this Maoist and this ideologically oriented towards communism kind of a setup. On the other hand, it also practiced what is known as the Westminster model of parliamentary democracy. So on the one hand, you have these standing committees and these little central committees that work as some sort of politburo kind of mechanism for the Maoist parties. On the other hand, you have the parliaments that also express the people's sentiment and the people's opinion. So from the Indian point of view, from the very first day, after post-monarchy, or during the post-monarchy Nepal, New Delhi was sort of confused about who is really the handler of this ship. Now, I think India is going to be in a position where India would like to have that confusion cleared for once and forever. Secondly, when the constitution was introduced or adopted in 2015, India had made certain set of demands, especially when it comes to inclusion of certain janjatis and groups and communities of Nepal. And there were certain demands within the Nepalese population in 2015 that continued to echo subsequently, even till date. And I think that is also going to be one of the key demands from the Indian side, that whatever configuration emerges in the coming days, these inclusions must happen, because any polity that is based on exclusion, as we are seeing that these only 4 or 5 families had monopolized power in the last 15 or rather 18 years, and that was not really helping the political setup at all, because it was creating this sense of alienation among a large section of population. And today we see that it is actually this alienated young population who have really become the trigger for this uprising. So India would first of all get its confusion cleared as far as what sort of polity it is going to be. Secondly, the amendments that were expected from the Nepal's constitution, 2015 constitution, those amendments should be carried out. And then thirdly, perhaps whoever comes in should come through the constitutional process. Because if you have the parliamentary process, it is not really a useful thing to bring in somebody for Muhammad Yunus in Bangladesh, paratrooping somebody overnight is not going to create a legitimate government. So India would prefer to have a legitimate government through the constitutional provisions, because once you have somebody introduced through the constitutional provision, through the constitutional mechanisms, there will be chances that this sort of an arrangement will be politically legal and not some sort of paratrooped or paradropped, political activist taking over reins of power, God knows from whichever vested interest they would come from. So I think these are the 3-4 things that India would look at as of now.
Certainly. And Sanjeev, are you hearing anything more about the law and order situation now as of 6:30 or so in the evening? I think it's about 6:45 in Kathmandu. Are you hearing anything about what the law and order situation right now is? What's expected for the night?
It looks like it has calmed down a bit, and 2 deaths were already reported, and Balin also, the same Balin Rasa also made an appeal to protesters that things have demands have been made, kind of, but in a way he has said that, so things are getting back to normal.
All right. Well, we certainly hope that situation remains so that some more clarity can come out. Akanshya, once law and order is brought under control, what do you think the next steps are really going to be? Because as we've been discussing, it's not just one government that has been targeted today. We've seen entire structure and the whole of parliament being set on fire in a sense. Prime Minister's house. What do you expect to see as the next step? If you have any?
Extremely difficult to predict, but what I would what I think likely scenario, there are 2-3 scenarios, I think. Most important is if the parliament stays intact, a way through can be brought about by the parliament. That again depends whether president is, because president is still in the office right now. It would be prudent, not to come up with statements which are going to kill our constitutional options. This is, I think, very, very important. There's obviously complete support by general public to the Gen Z movement, but there are legal procedures which I think must be followed. But at the same time, how there are very important issues that confronting Nepal right now. You know that a large section of people are unhappy with the 2015 constitution. So who's going to lead this to bring about amendments in the constitution? Kallol already talked about the general political scenario. So these are, I think, one, two options. But I've also heard of the various narratives. We don't know if other political forces could look for space in the changed scenario. We also have the pro-monarchy agitation at the same time. Will there be a space for a monarchy? We don't know. But there are political, there are many versions of narratives that's emerging from Nepal. So obviously, given the feeling right now and the emotions, because the emotions run really, really high. If the concentration could be on some restraint, then look at parliamentary options.
All right. Certainly very interesting perspectives, and I hope that we can continue this conversation over the next few days. If you're just tuning in to what is happening in Nepal, what we can tell you for sure is that Nepal's Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli has resigned after facing 2 days of protests, deadly protests, with 19 protesters being killed just on Monday, and then on Tuesday, more protesters coming out onto the streets, particularly in Kathmandu, setting alight the Parliament building, the Supreme Court, other big institutions in the country. What we know is many ministers have been attacked personally, injured, homes set on fire, but that, as Sanjeev Kathmandu tells us, the situation seems to be a little more under control, or the protests have subsided. So we're waiting to hear what exactly happens. What we understand so far is that President Ramchandra Paudel did receive Prime Minister Oli's resignation. He accepted it. He has put out his own appeal for all parties, including what are called the Gen Z protesters, representatives, to come together and come to some kind of conversation. We don't know if that's going to continue tomorrow and what's going to happen, but do to stay tuned. Do log into www.thehindu.com. I'd like to thank our guests this evening on the show, Kallol Bhattacherjee, our diplomatic correspondent, as well as Akanshya Shah from the MP IDSA, as well as Sanjeev Satgainya there in Kathmandu. From the team at The Hindu, thanks for watching.
Thank you so much.